The courtroom was quiet, almost deceptively calm. Chairs lined the rows of the gallery, papers stacked neatly on tables, and the gavel sat waiting for the first strike. But beneath the polished wood and fluorescent lights, tension pulsed like a low hum, an undercurrent no one could yet see. Family members of a murder victim had gathered here, ostensibly to witness justice, but none could have predicted the storm that was about to erupt. Alexander Ortiz sat at the podium beside his attorney, an orange jumpsuit marking him as the accused. His hands rested on the table, and for a moment there was a flicker of stillness in the air, a breath held in anticipation. But that stillness shattered when Carlos Lucero, the uncle of the slain Aliana Farfon, leapt over the barrier and made a beeline for the man who had taken his niece's life. The collision was instant. Bodies crashed to the floor. The sound of fists against flesh echoed off the walls. Chairs rattled. Screams of rage, grief, and shock intertwined into a chaotic symphony. One stepfather joined the fray. Another relative appeared, fists flying. A woman grabbed a folding chair, swinging wildly. The taser came out, a blue arc of light cutting through the melee. The courtroom had become a war zone, and this was just the beginning. 6 days earlier, Aliana Farfon's life had ended in a single, gunshot scream that shattered the silence of her apartment on Montgomery Boulevard in Albuquerque. Witnesses would later recall the sound, the sudden crash of a bedroom window, and the sense that something unspeakably wrong had just occurred. When authorities arrived, the scene was chilling. Aliana was gone, her life extinguished, her body broken. The investigation began in fragments, eyewitness accounts dripping horror like slow poison. Friends and neighbors described Ortiz as volatile, dangerous, unpredictable. Reports surfaced of arguments, a gun waved threateningly, shattered glass from a car he had damaged. Aliana's family had seen the warnings, heard the calls for help that went unanswered, and watched helplessly as fate collided with violence. Just as detectives were unraveling the tragedy of Aliana's death, another scream pierced the city. Nicole Maldonado, 6 days later, shot and killed outside a grocery store. The horror doubled, the stakes escalated. Ortiz had vanished in the shadows of these crimes, leaving behind a trail of devastation. By the time authorities tracked him down, he had barricaded himself in a residence near the scene. Weapons were discovered, ammunition stacked, ballistics linking him to both murders. The law caught up, but the wounds for the families ran deeper than any charge could reach. Now, more than a year later, the courtroom buzzed with tension. Ortiz, still facing 2 murder charges, was back for a hearing. Security cameras captured the gallery, showing family members sitting quietly, eyes fixed on the accused. But this calm was a mask. Beneath it, grief had hardened into rage. When Carlos Lucero leapt, no one could have stopped him. Not officers, not procedural warnings. The human element of pain, fury, and heartbreak had overwritten all else. Punches flew, bodies collided. The air was heavy with the scent of blood and sweat. Every swing of a fist, every shove, every desperate attempt to protect or attack became a declaration. These families were not powerless. They were witnesses, judges, and executioners in their own right, fueled by loss and the urgent desire for justice. The chaos continued, the violence unchecked for what felt like an eternity. The taser was drawn. Officers shouted orders, and still bodies moved like waves crashing against a cliff, inevitable, relentless, and dangerous. When the dust settled, deputies began the painstaking task of separating participants, assessing injuries, and documenting what had occurred. Blood-streaked faces, tear-streaked cheeks, and the raw edges of grief marked every person involved. Carlos Lucero, Pete Sassi, Aliana's stepfather, both had blood on their faces, both had acted in what they believed was righteous fury. Ortiz's father, Joe Ray Ortiz, stood nearby, claiming he had only acted to protect his son from a tide of uncontrolled anger. Interviews followed, voices trembled, emotions surged. Pete recounted the moments before he was tasered, his hands shaking as he tried to explain his actions, to rationalize the instinctive need to intervene. Carlos's words were terse, edged with anguish. It was worth every second, he said. Every word echoed the pain, the devastation, the absence of justice where it mattered most. The bailiff's testimony filled in the gaps, revealing details unseen in the viral footage. One man in white had leapt over the barrier, starting the physical confrontation. Another in a black sweater had intervened, escalating the melee. A woman with a brown sweater joined, kicking indiscriminately. Every action intertwined with intent, instinct, and chaos, creating a courtroom tableau of fury and desperation. The story did not stop at the courtroom. The criminal complaint, filed in January 2024, offered a chilling backstory. Aliana had called her father days before the shooting, reporting threats, an active gun waved in her face, and prior violence. Ortiz had left through an apartment window while she called for help, leaving shattered glass, a damaged car, and terror in his wake. Family members had intervened before, yet nothing had prevented the fatal escalation. Then Nicole Maldonado's death occurred, expanding the horror. She was a random victim in a city already shattered by grief, a witness to the same darkness that had claimed Aliana. Ortiz's actions were methodical, calculated, yet terrifyingly impulsive, a man capable of violent bursts without warning. When authorities finally captured Ortiz, the evidence was damning. Parts of firearms, ammunition, extended magazines, ballistics confirming the connection to Nicole's murder. Justice seemed inevitable, but human emotion is rarely neat. Families arrived in court not just as observers, they were participants, and the system had not prepared for the weight of their grief and rage. The courtroom brawl became viral, shared widely across social media. Clips showed punches, chaos, chairs in flight, but they didn't capture the full story. Newly released bodycam footage revealed the aftermath. Deputies tending to injured family members, interviews capturing raw pain, the complex interplay of grief, anger, and the law. The family's emotional toll was clear. Every action was a response to trauma, every movement informed by love and loss. As deputies questioned those involved, the motives behind each strike, shove, and defensive maneuver came to light. Ortiz's father spoke of protection. Pete described fear, adrenaline, and anger. Carlos's rage was tethered to grief and frustration with a system he perceived as insufficient. Every narrative strand revealed the human complexity behind the viral footage, a moral puzzle that the law could only partially address. Then came the twist. The courtroom conflict, though rooted in grief, began to intersect with social justice. Questions arose. How do families protect themselves when the justice system moves too slowly? How does rage intersect with legality? Can the system truly account for human grief and instinct? And beneath it all lingered the shadow of Ortiz's second alleged murder, the one still unresolved. The trial and plea deals followed. Carlos received supervised probation. Pete got a year. Ortiz was sentenced to life for Aliana's murder, while the Nicole Maldonado case remained pending. But the scars, visible in bodycam footage, on family members, and in the psyche of a grieving community, were far from resolved. The courtroom had shown only the surface. The true cost of the murders, the fight, and the aftermath remained hidden in the human heart. And yet, the story was far from over. As the final shots of bodycam footage fade, there remains a lingering question. What happened in the hours after the courtroom? Were there unseen forces at play, silent accomplices, past conflicts, or untold secrets shaping the violence? The law may have concluded, but justice, in the deepest human sense, is never fully contained within walls of a courthouse, and somewhere beyond the court records, beyond the viral footage, beyond what anyone has seen. The real truth waits, a shadow lingers in Albuquerque, silent, watching, and unresolved. What happens next may change everything you think you know about justice, grief, and the consequences of unbridled rage. The camera pans metaphorically beyond the courtroom, lingering on streets where Ortiz was captured, on homes that bore witness to violence, and on faces of family members whose grief had erupted into public fury. Somewhere, a secret remains buried, one that could rewrite the story of Aliana Farfon, Nicole Maldonado, and the courtroom that became a battlefield. Who truly orchestrated what happened that day, and how far does the shadow of these murders stretch into the lives of everyone involved?